sucker. Guess I got the last month free after all. Don't bother sending my security deposit. Consider it a parting gift for being such an easy mark. Calvin. That was the note my tenant left, thinking he'd beaten me yet again. But this time was different. I tricked him into moving out of his apartment and into a house that didn't exist. He packed his life into a truck and drove into a trap so elaborate even I didn't really believe it would work, until it did. Here's how I pulled off the craziest revenge story you've ever heard, and why greed will always evict itself. And if you want more stories like this one, remember to click the subscribe button so you don't miss out. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me tell you how a working mom with zero experience pulled off the most brilliant revenge you could imagine. My name is Sarah, and 3 years ago I inherited a small apartment building when my Aunt Jerry died. She left me her 4-unit building in a decent part of town. Nothing fancy, just solid brick from the 1970s with good bones and easy maintenance. I was working 60 hours a week at my marketing job. I was raising 2 kids with my husband Mike. I had zero experience as a landlord. The last thing I needed was more stress. 3 of my tenants were angels: the Johnsons, Mrs. Patel, and old Mr. Wilson. They paid on time, kept their places clean, and made landlording seem easy. Then there was Calvin Green in Unit 2, the man who would make my life hell for 3 straight years. Calvin knew every trick in the book. He'd pay rent just before I could evict him. He'd call me at 2 a.m. with fake emergencies. He even showed up at my family home where my children lived. This man cost me thousands in fake repairs, sleepless nights, and anxiety attacks that almost destroyed my marriage. For 3 years I felt powerless. For 3 years I let him walk all over me. Until I realized something that changed everything. Calvin's biggest strength, his greed, was also his biggest weakness. And I was about to use it to destroy him completely. But first, let me tell you exactly what this monster put me through. Calvin moved in about 6 months before Aunt Jerry died. His rental application looked perfect. Good credit score, steady job as an IT consultant. Everything seemed normal. The first month after I took over, Calvin's rent was 5 days late. No call, no explanation. When I finally reached him, he had some story about a client payment being delayed. "I really appreciate your understanding, Sarah," Calvin said over the phone. His voice was smooth as butter. "It's been a crazy week with this client. You know how these big companies are with their payments?" "Just don't let it happen again," I replied, trying to sound firm. "The mortgage doesn't wait." "Absolutely," he promised. "This is a one-time thing. You'll have the check tomorrow." But that became the pattern. Every month, a different sob story. His mother was in the hospital. The bank made an error. His car broke down. Each excuse sounded so real, so full of pain, that I almost believed him. Each time, he would wait until I was about to start eviction papers. Then suddenly the money would appear, usually a cashier's check with fake apologies and promises it wouldn't happen again. After 3 months of this, I started dreading the first of every month. I'd wake up in cold sweats, wondering if this would be another month of chasing Calvin for rent. Mike noticed the dark circles under my eyes. "You need to get help with this," he said one morning. "Maybe hire a property management company? And pay them 15%? I snapped. "We're barely breaking even as it is." I thought the late rent was bad enough, until Calvin discovered maintenance emergencies. My phone rang at 2 a.m. on a Tuesday. Calvin's voice was panicked. "Sarah, you need to get here now. There's water everywhere. The whole building could flood." I threw on clothes over my pajamas, my heart racing. When I arrived 20 minutes later, I found a slow drip from a pipe under his sink with maybe a cup of water on the floor. "I was afraid the whole place would be underwater by morning," he said dramatically. I noticed he was fully dressed, not in pajamas, with an open bag of chips and a paused video game on his laptop. This hadn't interrupted his sleep at all, only mine. "This couldn't wait until daylight?" I asked, kneeling on his kitchen floor in sweatpants. "Water damage can happen fast," he replied with wide-eyed innocence. "I was just trying to save you money." But it didn't stop there. Calvin had become an expert at gaming the system in ways I never imagined. The electrical emergency cost me 3 electrician visits at $95 per hour. The problem? Calvin had been plugging multiple space heaters into the same circuit, despite his lease specifically prohibiting this. "I had no idea," Calvin said innocently. They were gifts from my sister. But I saw the flicker of satisfaction in his eyes when the electrician handed me another bill. Then came the housing inspector incident. Calvin called the city to report his heat wasn't working. When the inspector arrived, the temperature was 63 degrees, 2 degrees below legal minimum. I got a citation. What the inspector didn't know? Calvin had blocked the heating vents with furniture and closed the dampers halfway. When I pointed this out, he just shrugged. I didn't realize that would affect the heat. After these visits, I'd sit in my truck trying to calm the rage building inside me. My knuckles would be white on the steering wheel. Calvin wasn't just a bad tenant. He was studying how to destroy me. I was reading tenant rights forums. He'd mentioned casually while I fixed yet another emergency. Did you know landlords need 72-hour notice before entering unless it's an emergency? So interesting. The message was clear. He was arming himself with knowledge to use against me. I thought things couldn't get worse, until he showed up at my home. The breaking point came when I finally filed for eviction after Calvin went 2 full months without paying rent. I'd lie awake, calculating how long our savings would last. Would we have to use our daughter's college fund? The day before our court date, I was making dinner when the doorbell rang. I opened it to find Calvin on my front porch where my kids played, with a cashier's check and that smug little smile. "Sorry for the trouble," he said. "I've been going through some stuff. Won't happen again." Seeing him at my family home sent a chill through me. How long had he known where I lived? Had he been watching my family? "How did you find my address?" I demanded, my voice shaking. "Oh, it's public record when you own property," he replied casually. "I wanted to make sure you got this right away. Wouldn't want any problems in court tomorrow." My children were inside. This manipulative man was on my doorstep, invading my safe space. I wanted to refuse the payment, but legally I had to take it. The case was dismissed. That night I installed a security system. Cameras, motion sensors, everything. 3 months later, we did the whole dance again. This time, I documented everything perfectly. I was confident we'd finally get our day in court. The morning of the hearing, Calvin filed an emergency motion for delay, claiming he needed time to gather evidence of alleged code violations. When my lawyer called with the news, I was at a job site. I had to sit in my truck, hands shaking. "He's saying what?" I shouted. "There are no code violations." "Doesn't matter," my lawyer explained tiredly. "The judge has to be careful with these things." "So he just gets to stay, for free, again?" The judge gave him 2 more weeks. The day before the new hearing, Calvin paid in full again. This cycle went on for almost 2 years. I felt like I was failing at everything. My blood pressure spiked. I was on medication at 42. My sister Lisa helped me find lawyers. I talked to 3 different ones. They all said the same thing. As long as Calvin paid before final judgment, there wasn't much I could do. "It's like he studied the law just to find its weaknesses," I ranted to Mike after another failed eviction. "Maybe we should just sell," Mike suggested, his face lined with worry. "This building is killing you, Sarah." Mike and I were talking less and less. I caught him looking at me sometimes with an expression I couldn't read. Was he starting to see me as a failure? Meanwhile, Calvin was bragging about his victories. Mr. Wilson told me he could hear Calvin laughing on phone calls, talking about how he was living rent-free. Hearing that he was actually bragging about manipulating me made my blood boil. I tried everything. I offered him cash to leave, a lump sum payment for voluntary move-out. He took the money, signed the agreement, and then simply didn't leave. After almost 3 years of this nightmare, the stress was affecting my health, my marriage, and my day job. As for Mike's suggestion that we off the building, it was a good one, but I hated the idea of letting Calvin win. That's when my good friend Tom came up with an idea over coffee one afternoon. I'd been venting to him about the situation, feeling defeated and exhausted. "What if you could make him want to leave?" Tom asked. "Like, really want to leave?" "I've tried everything," I said. "Cash offers, renovation plans, even offering to help find him a nicer place." No, Tom said, leaning forward. "You need to give him something he thinks is better for him. He's the type of person who's only happy if he believes he's cheated you. It's not enough for him to win. He needs to see you lose. He has to believe he's completely outsmarted you for this to work." And that's how Operation Housing Lottery was born. Tom helped me create a real-looking sweepstakes mailer that said, "You may already be a winner in the regional home giveaway." It had official-looking seals, fine print, and a unique winner confirmation code that needed to be called to verify. We set up a prepaid phone line and created a basic website with a stock photo of a nice suburban house. The contest rules said the winner would get a rent-free home for 2 years, after which they could buy it at a big discount. The catch? The mailer was only sent to one address, Calvin Green, Unit 2. When Calvin called the number, Tom's college roommate Jason, who works in sales and has the perfect phone voice, confirmed that he was indeed the grand prize winner. Jason explained that a local real estate company was using this promotion to build community goodwill. "We'll need to schedule a viewing of your new home," Jason told him, "and of course you'll need to be ready to move in within 30 days of acceptance." Calvin was suspicious at first, asking detailed questions about the contest and the property. Jason was well prepared with answers about how winners were selected from utility customer databases and that the home was part of a new development that wanted their first residents to attract more buyers. We arranged the viewing at a house that belonged to Tom's cousin. He had recently fixed it up for sale and was just waiting for paperwork to go through. Perfect! Tom played the role of the cheerful real estate agent, showing Calvin around the 3-bedroom house with a fenced backyard and updated kitchen, a huge upgrade from his 1-bedroom apartment. I wasn't there for the viewing, but Tom reported that Calvin walked through the house like a kid in a candy store, measuring spaces and talking about where he'd put his furniture. He asked several times about the catch, but Tom assured him there was none, just standard terms requiring him to maintain the property and not sublease it. "The development company needs positive publicity and happy residents," she explained. "They're investing in community satisfaction." Calvin signed the acceptance paperwork that day. According to the terms, he would need to move in on May 1st, exactly 28 days later. For the next few weeks, I held my breath every time my phone rang. If he found out, I'd be sued into the Stone Age. But instead of calling to expose the scam, he actually started packing. Mrs. Patel mentioned seeing him carrying boxes to his car, and Mr. Wilson spotted a small U-Haul in the parking lot one evening. The most shocking moment came when Calvin approached me in the hallway and said, "I'll be moving out on May 4th. I've got a better situation lined up." He couldn't hide his smug smile. "Oh," I said, trying to sound casual. "Where are you heading?" "Just a better opportunity, much better than this dump," he replied. "I'll leave the keys on the counter." I nodded and said, "I'll need to do a final walkthrough for your security deposit." I was trying to play it cool, but inside I was doing cartwheels. Finally, this nightmare was ending. But then I started panicking. What if Calvin figured it out at the last minute? What if someone at the house recognized him from the viewing? What if he called the police on me? My anxiety was through the roof. May 4th was a Monday. I obviously knew he would actually be leaving on May 1st, so I took the day off and arrived at the building early Friday morning. Calvin's parking spot was empty. Mrs. Patel stopped me in the hallway. "Your problem tenant left this morning," she said. "Very early before sunrise. My grandson was getting water when he heard the truck." I ran to Unit 2 and found the door unlocked. Inside, the apartment was empty except for some trash and a few worthless items. On the kitchen counter were the keys and a handwritten note. "Sucker. Guess I got the last month free after all. Don't bother sending my security deposit. Consider it a parting gift for being such an easy mark. Calvin." I stood there reading the note over and over, feeling relief that he was finally gone and fury at his parting shot. How dare he call me a sucker after years of manipulation? But then I remembered the second part of our plan, and I couldn't help but smile. I immediately called a locksmith and had the locks changed. I also took dozens of pictures documenting the condition of the apartment, which had damage well beyond normal wear and tear. There were holes in the walls, carpet stains, and what looked like deliberate scratches on the hardwood floors. Then I called Tom. "He's gone. Time for phase 2. "Perfect," Tom said. Jason already sent the final confirmation text with the move-in time of 3 p.m. At 2:30 p.m., Tom and I parked directly in front of the house we'd given Calvin in our rented minivan with tinted windows. It was a great house. Only one problem for Calvin. It had already been sold to a young family with 3 kids. Oh yes, there was a second even bigger problem, as he was about to find out. There was no contest. The minutes ticked past 3 p.m. and I started to get nervous, but at exactly 3:05 p.m., Calvin pulled up in his car. He was smiling broadly, wearing a button-up shirt, dressier than I'd ever seen him, and had a woman with him who I'd never seen before. Maybe a girlfriend he was trying to impress with his amazing contest win. Behind them came a second vehicle, his friend driving what looked like a U-Haul packed to the brim with Calvin's belongings. They'd brought an entire moving crew for his big day. We were close enough to see every expression, hear every word through the windows. My heart was hammering so hard I thought Tom could hear it. "This is really happening," I whispered, gripping the dashboard. Calvin strutted up to the front door like he owned the place, his girlfriend trailing behind him with an excited smile. He had a folder of paperwork in one hand and his phone in the other, probably with the confirmation details pulled up. He rang the doorbell with the confidence of a man who'd never been told no in his life. The homeowner, a woman in her 30s, answered with a baby on her hip. Even from our front row seat, we could see Calvin's winning smile as he launched into what was probably his rehearsed speech about being the contest winner. The woman's face went from confusion to concern to alarm in about 10 seconds flat. "I think there's been some mistake," we heard her say, trying to close the door slightly, but Calvin wasn't having it. He stepped forward, blocking the door with his foot. "No mistake, ma'am. I'm Calvin Green, the grand prize winner of the regional home giveaway. This is my house now." His voice was getting louder, more aggressive. "I have all the paperwork right here. Sir, I don't know what you're talking about, but this is our home. We bought it last month." That's when Calvin's mask started slipping. His girlfriend looked confused, glancing between Calvin and the homeowner. "Calvin, what's going on?" "There's obviously been some mix-up," Calvin said, his voice rising. "This lady doesn't understand. I won this house. I have the deed transfer paperwork right here." The woman tried to close the door, but Calvin pushed against it. "Calvin!" his girlfriend said, sounding alarmed. "What are you doing?" "Getting what's mine!" Calvin shouted, shoving harder against the door. The baby started crying, a piercing wail that made my stomach clench. The woman was clearly scared now, calling for her husband. "David! David!" Within seconds, a huge, muscle-bound man appeared behind his wife. He looked like a wrestler from WWE. When he saw Calvin forcing his way against the door, his entire demeanor changed. "Get away from my family!" the husband shouted furiously, enraged to see his family being attacked by a complete nutter. My heart froze. What if he was armed? Big trouble. "This is my house," Calvin screamed, completely losing it now. "I won it. Some scammer sold you a house that wasn't theirs to sell." He threw his shoulder against the door, actually trying to force his way inside. That's when David had enough. The husband stepped outside and shoved Calvin hard, sending him stumbling backward off the porch. "I said get away from my family!" Calvin's girlfriend screamed. "Calvin, stop it! What's wrong with you?" But Calvin was beyond reason now. 3 years of always getting his way, always manipulating the system, had convinced him this was just another obstacle to overcome. "You can't keep me out of my own house!" he bellowed, charging back toward the porch. David met him halfway. The two men crashed together in the front yard, Calvin swinging wildly while David tried to restrain him without actually fighting back. "Someone call the police!" David's wife shouted from the doorway, still holding the screaming baby. Calvin's girlfriend was sobbing now, begging him to stop. His friend with the U-Haul was standing by the truck, clearly wanting no part of whatever this was. "This is insane," Tom whispered beside me. "He's completely lost his mind." I couldn't speak. I was watching 3 years of built-up rage and entitlement explode all at once. Calvin had never been told no. He'd never faced real consequences. And now, faced with the reality that his prize was fake, he was having a complete meltdown. David managed to pin Calvin to the ground just as the first police siren wailed in the distance. "I'm not going anywhere!" Calvin was screaming from underneath David. "This is my house! Check the paperwork! Check the paperwork!" The girlfriend was backing toward the street, her hands over her mouth in horror. "I don't know him," she kept saying to no one in particular. "I don't know this person." When the police car screeched to a halt, 2 officers jumped out. They took one look at Calvin thrashing on the ground, shouting about fraud and stolen houses, and immediately moved to restrain him. "Sir, you need to calm down," the first officer said. "I am calm," Calvin shrieked, which was possibly the least calm thing anyone had ever said. These people are living in my house. The homeowners produced their thick folder of legitimate documents, mortgage papers, deed, inspection reports, insurance documents, everything legitimate and legal and completely real. Calvin produced his fake contest paperwork, waving it around like it was a magic spell that would make reality bend to his will. "This is all fake," the second officer said after glancing at Calvin's papers. "Sir, this appears to be some kind of fraudulent contest." "It's not fake. I won it. I've been here. I can describe the house. They showed me round. I won it. Just let me call them. They'll explain everything." That's when they arrested him. As the handcuffs clicked into place, Calvin's friend quietly got into the U-Haul and drove away without a word. Smart man. The girlfriend stood on the sidewalk, mascara running down her face, watching the man she thought she knew being loaded into the back of a police car for trespassing and assault. "I can't believe this," she kept saying. "I can't believe this is happening." In our minivan, Tom and I were trying not to lose it completely. I had my hand clamped over my mouth, tears of laughter streaming down my face. "Did you see his face when the cop called his paperwork fake?" Tom whispered. "Did you hear him screaming, 'I won it,' while getting arrested?" I whispered back. We watched as the police took statements from the homeowners, who were shaken but unharmed. The baby had stopped crying once Calvin was removed from the property. The girlfriend finally called someone, probably for a ride, and sat on the curb looking shell-shocked until a car came to pick her up. Calvin was driven away in the back of a police car, still shouting about fraud and stolen houses and how he was going to sue everyone involved. The homeowners went back inside their house, their real house that they'd actually bought, and closed the door on the whole nightmare. And Tom and I sat in our minivan, watching the most beautiful disaster I'd ever witnessed unfold exactly as planned. "So," Tom said once we'd caught our breath, "how does it feel to watch 3 years of karma deliver itself all at once?" I thought about Calvin in the back of that police car. No house, no girlfriend, no friend with a U-Haul, probably facing charges for trespassing and assault, completely and utterly destroyed by his own greed and entitlement. "Like justice," I said. "It feels like justice at last." We drove away knowing that Calvin's nightmare was just beginning while mine had finally ended. I had my life back. I did eventually get a threatening email from Calvin claiming I was behind the fraudulent contest, demanding payment for his moving expenses, motel costs, and temporary housing, as well as the house promised in the competition, or its equivalent in cash. I forwarded it to my sister Lisa first, who laughed so hard she nearly cried, then to my lawyer, who sent a formal response noting that, first, we had no idea what contest he was referring to. Second, he had voluntarily left the apartment and left a note explicitly saying he didn't want his security deposit returned. And finally, that we had extensive documentation of property damage that far exceeded the security deposit amount, and would soon be sending him a bill for the excess. We never heard from Calvin again. I did send his security deposit accounting to his last known email address, showing how the entire amount was applied to damages, with an additional $1,250 balance remaining. That bill was never paid, and I chose not to pursue it. Having Calvin out of my life was worth far more than the money. Oh, I also sent a huge hamper, the biggest I could find, packed to the brim with goodies, to the family who were innocent victims of our plan. I hope it went some way to compensate them for the trauma of Calvin's assault. The unit was renovated and rented within 3 weeks to a retired teacher who pays her rent 5 days early every month and brings me homemade cookies at Christmas. As for the building, I decided not to sell after all. With Calvin gone, managing the property became what it should have been all along, an occasional responsibility rather than constant stress. The rental income is now steady, and I've been able to make some long-delayed improvements that all the tenants appreciate. I learned something important through this experience. Being in business doesn't mean I have to be a pushover. I can be strategic, clever, and assertive while still maintaining my integrity. Calvin thought he could manipulate me because I seemed like an easy target, a working mother juggling multiple responsibilities. He was wrong. Sometimes I wonder what happened to Calvin, if he found another landlord to torment, or if he learned his lesson. Part of me feels a little guilty about the deception, but then I remember the 3 years of manipulative chaos he put me through, the sleepless nights, the anxiety attacks, the way he made me doubt my own abilities, and the guilt fades pretty quickly. The irony isn't lost on me. Calvin thought he was the clever one, always gaming the system and living by his wits. In the end, his belief that he could get something for nothing, that there was always an angle to be played, was exactly what brought him down. He was right about one thing, though. Somebody was definitely a sucker in our relationship. It just wasn't me. I learned we don't have to accept being walked all over. Sometimes the best revenge is simply giving someone exactly what they think they want and letting their own greed destroy them. He called me a sucker, but the only thing he won was a one-way ticket to a motel with no refund. Have you ever had a Calvin in your life? Someone who pushed every boundary, broke every rule, and smiled while doing it? Tell me in the comments. And if you like this story of quiet revenge and poetic justice, give it a like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs a win. Because sometimes the best revenge is letting karma borrow your toolbox.